I learned it's dangerous to compliment somebody because I told Joe last month, I said, "Good job, Joe." He says, "Why don't you do it?" So, sorry I asked. But anyway, Joe's been reading some points on liberty from Jim Spearco, and this is number 4. Liberty is about equal opportunity, not equal rights. Equal opportunity for all. Liberty is about equal opportunity, not equal results. All men are created equal in the eyes of the Creator, however you view that statement. They are created equal in their place on earth and their freedom, if no other man infringes upon it, to act in the way they choose to. That doesn't mean that they are equal in ability, that they are equal in strength, or equal in intelligence, or that they have equal interest. You have two people both with 150 IQs. One loves mathematics, one loves agriculture. They will have very different results and paths in life. When you hear about equal opportunity today, especially when you are more conservative on the physical side of things, you probably cringe when you think of how corrupt the entire thing is. But don't throw the word out because it has been bastardized by a government apparatus that fails to comprehend what it means. Let's make the word mean what it really means. Equal opportunity. Everybody starts, everybody finishes, everybody is free to run the race, and no one is allowed to trip anyone along the way. If you are slow, you will come in last. If you are fast, you will come in first. There is a reward in coming in first. There are ways of making coming in last advantageous as well. It's up to you to figure it out. We are not supposed to be here to make everyone come up to everyone else's level. That's not equal opportunity. That is expecting equal results. Liberty cannot exist in a society that expects equal results. Only in a society that believes in equal opportunity. That was point number 4. I'm going to cheat here. Point number 5. Liberty must be defended by the individual. No one can truly defend liberty for you. Yes, if you are living in your little place out in the hills and the local government decides that they want to take your property and it is not legal for them to do so, that is where the federal supremacy is supposed to come in. That is where the feds are supposed to come in and say, no, let this guy have his land and get off his land. You have never heard of that happening, but that is the way federal supremacy is supposed to work. If a state passes a law and says that John Doe from the state of Indiana can no longer have a Tea Party meeting, that is where the federal government is to come in and tell the state of Indiana that is an infringement on the right of the people to peaceably assemble. You don't get to do that. Not, you will make this person do this, which is how the federal government is working today. I think we all know that from the Supreme, it'll eventually end up on the Supreme Court, this Obamacare thing where they're forcing people to buy health insurance. Telling the states what they will enforce instead of preventing the states from doing oppression. If a state passes a law that says there will be no guns in the state of Georgia, it is supposed to be the federal government that shows up and says, no, you don't get to do that. We are sorry, but that violates that individual right protected in our Constitution. There is no such thing as a right that you have because of the Constitution. You do not have constitutional rights. We have constitutionally protected rights. The rights in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, which are set aside for the individual, are seen as predestined rights. The Constitution exists to protect those rights from the government, not to give those rights to people from government. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand the very foundational law of our nation, and it is no wonder that people are confused. If you want to understand a house, you had better understand its foundation first. You dig a hole in the ground, a certain depth and certain dimensions, and you say to an architect, if we put in a foundation, how big can the building be? He will tell you to the inch how big it will be. Because understanding the foundation is understanding the building. If you don't understand that the laws in this nation are founded on the backbone of the Constitution, and the Constitution is specifically designed to protect people from the government, rather than crying rights of the people from the government, you will never understand anything about America and how we are supposed to be living. You can disagree with that, but there is no way to change it. Facts are stubborn things. They just don't go away. If you're going to have liberty as a right, you're going to have to defend it, even though, as an individual, there are times where someone is supposed to help you because the force against you is greater than you can bear. If someone breaks into your home, you may shoot them for breaking into your home. But if 15 armed thugs show up and tell you to get off your property, you may not be able to counter that. That is law enforcement's role, and there is that part of the equation. But on an individual incremental basis, if you are not fighting a little bit to maintain your liberty on a daily basis on your own and paying attention to it, you cannot sustain it. I think that's a really good quote there at last, because these things just aren't self-perpetual. We have to keep them in our forefront. I found a couple of things that I wanted to read that I think is some old-time stuff from our history that I think would really give us an idea of how far we've come from our roots. This I found interesting because it is a little story about the original Boston Tea Party. After the Boston Tea Party, the British Navy retaliated by blocking the port of Boston. The colonies surrounding Massachusetts responded with sympathy and action. On May 24, 1773, the House of Burgesses in Virginia proposed and approved a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer. And this is a quote from the House of Burgesses. This House, being deeply impressed with apprehension of the great dangers to be derived to British America from the hostile invasion of the city of Boston, whose commerce and harbor are on the first day of June next to be stopped by an armed force, deem it highly necessary that the said first day of June be set apart as a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer, devoutly to implore the divine interposition for averting heavy calamity which threatens destruction on our civil rights and the evils of civil war, to give us one heart and mind firmly opposed to every injury to American rights, and that the minds of His Majesty and His Parliament may be inspired from above with wisdom, moderation, and justice to remove from the loyal people of America all cause of danger from a continued pursuit of measures pregnant with their ruin. I thought, since this is named the Tea Party now, that was a little interesting history about how the Virginians saw that and how they sought God to prevent the Civil War that eventually came. This was President Harry S. Truman's speech after the end of World War II, and I think it fits in well with tonight's talk on liberty. In 1946, he said this: "We have just come through a decade in which forces of evil in various parts of the world have been lined up in a bitter fight to banish from the face of the earth religion and democracy. For these forces of evil have long realized that both religion and democracy are founded on one basic principle: the worth and dignity of the individual man and woman. Dictatorship, on the other hand, has always rejected that principle. Dictatorship, by whatever name, is founded on the doctrine that the individual amounts to nothing, that the state is the only thing that counts, that men and women and children were put on earth solely for the purpose of serving the state. If men and nations would but live by the precepts of the ancient prophets and the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount, problems which now seem so difficult would soon disappear. This is a supreme opportunity for the church to continue to fulfill its mission on earth. Oh, for an Isaiah or a St. Paul to reawaken this sickened world to its moral responsibilities." And finally, on July 2nd, 1776, at the Continental Congress, as the Continental Congress was meeting in Philadelphia to declare independence, Commander-in-Chief George Washington was gathering his troops on Long Island to meet the British in battle in and around New York City. That day he wrote in general orders to his men those memorial words declaring that we as a nation serve under God. And this is a quote from General Washington: "The time is now near at hand which must probably determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. The fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and conduct of this army. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us no choice but a brave resistance or the most abject submission. This is all we can expect. We therefore resolve to conquer or die. Let us therefore rely on the goodness of the cause and the aid of the Supreme Being, in whose hands victory is, to animate and encourage us to great and noble actions. The eyes of all our countrymen are now upon us, and we shall have their blessings and praises, if happily we are the instruments of saving them from the tyranny mediated against them. Let us therefore show the whole world that a free man contending for liberty on his own ground is superior to any slavish mercenary on earth. I have been really bothered by what happened with the stealing of Chrysler Corporation by Barack Obama. I spent my career working at Ford Motor Company, and part of my job there was teaching preventative maintenance and teaching classes on it, seminars and writing manuals. And I ended up visiting 15 Ford plants, and they sent me to Detroit for months of training and that sort of thing. And I chose to delve in deeply to the auto industry in the 90s. So I knew a lot about what was going on when GM, I saw a lot of stupid mistakes they were making, Ford was too at the time, and just a lot of things that weren't right that needed to be fixed eventually, which led to their bankruptcy. But when knowing, and I've been retired for a while, but I still stay in touch with all that. When I saw what Richard Murdoch last month in this building, standing right here, described the details of what happened. And that was the prime bondholders were taken, which was partly the Indiana State Teachers Retirement Fund and the Indiana Sheriff's Retirement Fund. When those prime bondholders were told, you will take 20 cents on the dollar for your money, and if you don't like it, walk. Now that's Don Corleone, and if you don't know who he is, it's called The Godfather. And I have real practical experience by this because I was a security guard on the Berlin Wall, and I used to walk up that tower and look across at that gray world and see those sad people over there. And if we don't turn this around, that's right where we're headed. It's so bad that the National Socialists didn't even do that. You might know them by being the Nazis. They even let Krupp and Benz and all those big industrialists keep their factories. They told them what they were going to produce and how much money they were going to make, but they didn't steal the factory from them like the Bolsheviks did. And we're dealing with Bolsheviks right now. They don't even believe in fair elections. They'll cheat if they get a chance. And I'm really concerned about it. But, you know, Beth was up here mentioning fear. Let me tell you the extent of how bad that gets. One day I climbed a tower, and I was watching, the Russians had a tower about 100 yards from us, and we used to watch each other through binoculars. And I saw the East German guards, and for those of you that know history, they had those funny looking mushroom helmets. The East German guards would patrol the wall, and the Russians manned the towers. And I never will forget this East German guard riding behind a friend of his, or another soldier, along that wall, and he so wanted to communicate with me, but he was scared to death that the Russians would see him. So he got his hand between the guy's back that he was riding and himself, and went like this and just smiled as big as he could. Now that's fear. And when people are afraid to come and talk to you for whatever reason, and that's where we're headed. But when I saw what Obama did in stealing Chrysler Corporation, and it went to the Supreme Court and they backed it, we're in a really dangerous situation right now. And this has nothing to do with even the debt. This has to do with political power. And so I appreciate you people, you know, that come out and they're helping in this. I know the guys that run this have been putting a lot of time and everything in it. And they told me I had 10 minutes, and I told my friends that's just a warm-up for me. But thanks for your time.